Let's have a look at some business news now on the programme. We've been talking on the programme about the arrest of Huawei's chief financial officer, and Anka's been looking at some of the reactions to that arrest.
That's right, Stuart. Meng Wanzhou, who was arrested in Canada on Saturday, is also the daughter of the founder of the Chinese telecoms giant. Her arrest is reportedly related to an investigation on whether Huawei violated U.S. sanctions against Iran. Now, Washington's already fined another Chinese company, ZTE, $1.2 billion for selling goods to Iran and North Korea. China's foreign ministry has since responded, demanding Meng's release and that Canada and the U.S. reveal their reasoning behind her arrest. The incident has stirred tensions just days after Beijing and Washington agreed to a tariff ceasefire in a months-long trade war. France 24's Beijing correspondent Charles Pellegrin tells us more about what this latest news could mean for those negotiations.
This is going to put a spanner in the works of the trade talks between Washington and Beijing, and it's not going to help build trust between those two countries. And really, this is a sign that in spite of the truce that Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping said they found on Saturday, American policy towards China has significantly hardened. And companies like Huawei, like ZTE, are seen by Washington as often as security risks because of their ties with Beijing and with the government, and especially because of their potential access to consumer data. There's also another element to this, which is the technological rivalry between the United States and China, especially in the field of 5G networks. Both those countries are vying to lead the way in that sector, and this could be a way to sort of try and hamper the progress that Huawei has made.
Well, investors were already jittery about that uncertain trade truce between the U.S. and China, and Meng Wanzhou's arrest did nothing to help financial markets recover. We saw sharp losses in technology shares that pulled down benchmark stock indexes in China and Hong Kong. You can see Hong Kong down about 2.5%, Shanghai 1.7%. But we also saw a wider sell-off in Asia, 1.9 on the Nikkei. That's the closing numbers there. Seoul's Kospi 1.5. In Europe, we had a similar story. Huawei is the world's second biggest smartphone maker, so any potential sanctions on the firm will have a big ripple effect on markets. We're seeing Frankfurt's DAX with the most losses at the open, as autos, basic resources, and banks are leading the losses here in Europe. Now, the OPEC oil producers cartel is meeting today in Vienna under pressure over its production limits. De facto leader Saudi Arabia has suggested limiting output once again to boost flagging prices. But Donald Trump has repeatedly urged the group to keep supplies high and prices low. This meeting comes days after Qatar said that it would withdraw from OPEC, saying its voice isn't being heard in the cartel. Catherine Bennett has more on what's at stake.
What a difference a few months make. At OPEC's meeting in June, members agreed to increase output. But that was before global oil benchmark Brent crude touched a 4-year high in early October, only to then tumble more than 30%. In November, crude oil had its worst month in a decade. To respond to this precipitous drop, OPEC and its allies are expected to announce cuts to supply. But the question is, by how much? Saudi Arabia, the organisation's de facto leader, has indicated it wants to slash output by at least 1.3 million barrels per day. This would defy the wishes of US President Donald Trump, who has pressed for continued low prices.
With the United States, but also they have obligations to the other OPEC countries. So it's a very narrow tightrope that Saudi Arabia is treading.
Russia, a non-OPEC member, has so far resisted lowering production, leading some members to fear it has too much influence over the organisation. But OPEC risks a major supply glut in the coming months if they don't take action now.
Well, Stuart, that's all from me. We'll have more business news in later bulletins. Of course, the latest with that OPEC meeting.
Thanks very much, Anka Pahula, with the business on France 24.